All right, everyone. Welcome. I hope everybody had a good lunch to our afternoon breakout session. I will be presenting Omnichannel CX in action along with Albertsons. My name is Spencer Thomas. I'm a senior solutions engineer at Medallia and really excited to bring this to you. I'll let Michael and Henrik introduce themselves and we'll give you some context about what we're presenting here today. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, nice to meet everyone. Michael Flatt, Senior Manager, Customer Market Intelligence at Albertsons, under Henrik, and excited to speak to you all today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Henrik Christianson, Senior Director of Customer and Market Intelligence at Albertsons. I've been there 5 years now. And our team does CX, custom research, some insights capabilities for the enterprise, and related things.
And I'm especially excited to bring this to you as it kind of represents a full circle moment for me at Medallia, as I was initially staffed on the program as more of an SME subject matter expert, as a person literally building the surveys and all of that. And now, as my role has evolved, I'm now here able to present what value what we initially built 4+ years ago is delivering for their business. We're kind of going to break this presentation down into a couple sections here. First, kind of setting some context about how digital experience can connect to the physical analog world, what that looks like. Then Henrik and Michael will cover Albertsons CX blueprint, so we can kind of go behind the scenes to understand how they built the program that they built. And then we're going to have a sit-down discussion, discuss some of the nuts and bolts, the who did you work with, how did you set this up, parts of their program to drive the business outcomes that we'll share in a moment here. What I want to first do is kind of set the context for what a typical digital experience looks like. And this is what is the actual person doing when they're in a digital experience. I think of this as the scroll. Everybody knows what this is. You're kind of looking at your phone, scrolling through, and 15 minutes goes by. Where did all the time go? And these are kind of anonymous type experiences. They're not performed with anybody. You're just kind of by yourself. It's kind of an enclosed experience for yourself. I think of this kind of in the context of media consumption in the past used to have a beginning, middle, and end. Now it's just kind of endless. Again, all apps now are kind of built on the scroll. And we have these apps that we return to, our comfort type apps. It might be your social media apps. It might be your news apps. For me personally, it's more of the sports entertainment apps. I want to get the updated scores. I check ESPN a lot. I check snow reports a lot. Those are the ones that if I'm just trying to kill a couple minutes, maybe waiting in line, those are the ones that I go to. I've kind of buried my social media apps over the side because I know I can kind of endlessly scroll over there. But comfort apps have kind of evolved a little bit to help elevate digital experiences. There are some people that, their comfort app might be your local retail store. Well, I have to kill some time, but let me just see what coupons are at my local store. So what this allows us to do is create more of an elevated digital experience, a digital experience that actually connects you to something in the physical real world. Doesn't suck you into more scrolling. So you place an order online, you then go to the store, the order's there. Again, that is a digital experience assisting a real world type experience. You can think of these things as well as I attend a lot of sporting events, and it actually has gotten a lot easier over the last couple of years. Your tickets are on your phone, you show up, you don't have to find the paper ticket anymore, and you just kind of beep, beep, beep. And then, if you actually pause and think about it, how much more convenient that experience is today than it was years ago. So what opportunities does this actually present for brands? Well, this helps brands kind of bridge the online and offline experiences. The experiences themselves are more merged. I believe Sid mentioned yesterday that people don't think of your brand as two separate experiences, your online experience, your app experience, your in-store experience. Those are perceived as unified type things. If you tell me that there's an item in stock on the phone or when I show up at the store, I would expect that item to be in stock. So sometimes, we kind of think of our phones, of digital experiences as things that are kind of time sucks. Let's flip that over a little bit. Let's consider the good things. Yes, the good things that our phones do for us as kind of a companion, as something that helps unlock those real world type experiences. This is where the opportunity is for a lot of brands. This is where you can help build loyalty. You show up to a store and something is ready when it was promised to be ready. Again, okay, that's something that helps build a more loyal experience for me. So why is this important? Well, 70% of customers prefer mobile apps as their channel of choice. It is where the engaged users are. If you're interacting with something in the digital space, you might go to the website, but that's more something that you're browsing. But if you actually download the app, that's kind of your way of opting into the brand. Okay, I will check this app every once in a while. They're offering notifications and so on. Okay, that's fine. I think I'll opt into that. We'll see, so long as they don't spam me, I'm okay with this. But additionally, that type of behavior drives 3.5 times more revenue on mobile app versus mobile web, according to a Shopify report. So again, it's kind of just backing up that habit. It's that you grab your phone, you check the app, you check those comfort apps. Some of them might be shopping type related apps, and that's where kind of that loyalty, that sales can come from. So what does this look like for Albertsons? Well, specific to them, they have a pretty common online ordering to fulfillment type experience. But think of like what literally happens when you place this order. You're on your phone, you're on the website, you place the order. That information goes out to the store, which then gets fulfilled. The customer is then notified that their order is ready. So this would be kind of like a curbside pickup type order. Could also be a delivery type order. In this case, this is the drive up and go curbside pickup experience for Albertsons brands. Customer is notified, then tells the store, I'm in this specific parking spot. And then following that, what's unique about the program that Albertsons has built, and we'll get into detail in a moment here, is the survey push notification following that interaction. So again, that push notification is then routed to the same phone that the person originally made the order on to then give feedback about the order. We're going to dig in a little bit on the next couple slides here. Henrik and Michael are going to share a little bit about their CX blueprint and how they approach customer experience.
Our e-commerce business is way more digitally mature than our in-store. And through Spencer's assistance, we installed Medallia's SDK a long time ago for e-commerce. And what we're talking about today is how we're branching over to in-store for mobile app usage as well. About a third of our customers use the app for one of our banners quite frequently. And for price-sensitive shoppers, they're 40% more likely to use it. The app is where customers naturally engage with us for a variety of different things. They browse, they create lists, they look for deals, they clip coupons, look for recipes. So it's become a one-stop shopping. And beyond grocery, we also operate pharmacies, so you can schedule your vaccinations in the app. All of that happens in the app. So it really is a natural environment to also administer surveys. And for in-store, the survey is customized because each journey is different. We have a unique survey for curbside pickup, for home delivery, and also for in-store. So we think it's a big asset for us to evolve the capture point. Right now on the pin pad, when you check out in store, there's an NPS survey, but that doesn't allow for any open text feedback. And there's some other features. If we have more time, we can talk more about Spencer. We see that when we experiment with a variety of different capture methods, that the device push actually generates a higher response rate than email surveys. So that's why we're leaning into that. We'll talk more about how these digital surveys allow us for more precise attribution through hash data.
So over the last several years, we've experimented with a lot of different survey types with Medallia, QR code, email, you name it. We've probably tried it with Spencer and team. And what we found that works best at scale, and now lucky for us in a Gen AI world, is our post-transaction push survey. And if you look here on the right side of the page, this is just an example flow from our DUG, or what we call drive up and go, or pickup experience, with the one caveat being that before you get to this flow, you must first select through the push notification here on the left. And that's just our Safeway banner example. And then just a little bit how it works. So first, customers must be opted into the app, which for us is around 50% of iOS and Android users. And then from there, you'll notice we also have different triggers based on the channel. So for e-com, our trigger is based on a final email that goes out to the customer. And for in-store, it's a little bit trickier, but it actually triggers based on the exact point of sale transaction itself. Now, every organization is different, but we identified 5 internal teams and 1 external team, Medallia, as being critical to make the push real. And we can get a little bit more into the Q&A, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of teams. The first team, retail operations, was our key internal business partner to get leadership buy-in, to have change management communication, and then also to update our quarterly goals for this new survey type. And then the other one I'll highlight is our point of sale team. So when we first did push notifications, it was specific to e-com orders, which is our Doug and delivery. But as we quickly found out, for in-store transactions, we need a way to connect the actual transaction in store to a device, and our point of sale team was critical for that. And then just a big kudos to Medallia for being with us the whole way through, from survey configuration to quality assurance testing, and then answering a lot of our technical questions from our developers. And so the takeaway here for you all is that your business may be structured a little bit differently, but it would be great before you endeavor in something like this to just identify the key stakeholders and get buy-in early, and it will make the process a lot easier. Now, I just want to spend a few minutes talking about our latest innovation, which is really exciting to our whole company, and that's video feedback. So when Medallia first came to us and said they had video feedback, we were super excited to pilot it. And our assumptions going in, there was kind of three things we were thinking about. Luckily, in the grocery retail business, quantitative data is something we have at our hands in large volumes, but we're often missing that human element in the experience. And just one example, in one of our videos, we got a 10 from a loyal customer, but based on the video itself, it definitely was not a 10 experience. The package was a little damaged. And so that human element allows us to really get a more true understanding of the order. And then we also thought video feedback could be a great way to serve as many focus groups around different business topics that were relevant to us that could then be searchable as well. And maybe most importantly, and what we found a lot of value in, is video feedback used in team meetings. We've all been in those meetings on Teams and Zoom, and it kind of drags on. And what we found, and you'll see here in this quote from our VP of e-commerce, Chad, around how video really brings the customer mindset to life. And he even specifically mentions in-group meetings. And then one area that we hadn't thought about before that he's actually using for e-com is developing training to close the gaps. And video feedback really allows us to do that quicker. And just wanted to provide a screenshot too on the left of how easy video feedback is to implement. We just have a question, and then the customer can either upload a video or they can take a video on the spot. And what's great about Medallia is that we have an automatic voice-to-text translation that can then feed into the rest of our feedback ecosystem. And then now Henrik's going to talk a little bit about how our digital survey program is impacting the business.
We've achieved tremendous results. In the past year, we've seen double-digit increases in the NPS for curbside pickup. It's what we call drive up and go, and even bigger lift in delivery NPS. And it's helped us raise sales. We're up over 20% in digital sales in Q3 versus prior year. And we've also attracted more loyal customers. Again, double-digit increase in customers that have joined our loyalty program. So it's happened because of what Michael just touched on. Our operations teams are using the insights to the fullest extent. They sometimes check several hours, several times by the hour every day, just to see if there's something they can intercept moments after something may have gone wrong and then address it with the customer.
Henrik, Michael, and I are going to discuss a little bit more details about the program. The last couple minutes, we can open it up to the broader group. So, Henrik, I'll start with you. So, initially, you were sold on this maybe 4.5 years ago is when you started working with Medallia. And the idea of what I would describe doing the hardest thing first, was not a standard digital program in terms of intercept surveys on the website and app. It was, let's use the app as a delivery mechanism for push notifications to meet customers where they are. The drive up and go and delivery touch points specifically were identified first as what you wanted to do. So what sold you on the idea? I think it makes sense in 2026, but 2021, there's maybe more people using mobile. But what sold you on the idea to use that as the primary means for your CX program?
I think because we were quite old school when I joined the company, there was an alphanumeric code on the receipt tape, which you sometimes see out there, and it generated such a small response rate that we wanted to correct for that in a big way. So that's why we wanted to become digital with the survey. Now, Medallia's survey design is also stupendously user friendly because it looks great, it's easy, it's attractive, and it gets us the response rates that we need. And we have flexibility with the survey, all of the features that you guys do in any of your custom research. We have sensitive rating scales. We can randomize the order of attributes. And we can even put conditional questions in there, which we have implemented. If you answer in a certain way to one question, then there may be another question to go deeper into that. So that's really where we wanted to head with that.
So Michael, I can set you up for this one. How do you ensure that the push notification survey does not overlap with a lot of other teams, a lot of other priorities? There is, you know, you're not the only team that says, "Oh, let's use the app for that." There's a limited real estate and limited attentions that you don't oversaturate, and then, well, let's make everything that we would do over email on push or something like that. So, have you managed to make sure that customers don't get sent too many surveys or other notifications? Because you're not just competing with other surveys; it could be other things that other interactions within the app.
Right. So I'd say for us, when we want to do a survey in the app, there is definitely that, like you said, competing priorities, different teams that want to do things in the app itself. And I don't know if you all got a chance to see the flow, but and actually thanks to Spencer for the terminology here, but what we do is actually an outside the app push notification versus an in-app notification or an in-app survey. So the customer actually does not even have to have our app open. They can just be browsing on their phone and they'll get the push. And then they just can select the push and it'll go to the survey. So because it was outside the app, that actually allowed us to get around a lot of the other priorities. And like we have a shop experience team that kind of handles a lot of the app work. And so because it was outside the app, that kind of, I guess, gave us the green light a little easier than if we wanted to do a survey in the app itself. That would kind of maybe go on like the homepage or something. Like an always on survey in the app would be a little different a business case. So I'd say just the fact that this actually triggers based on something that's not really related to the app and shows up outside of the app on a customer's phone allowed us to kind of get it implemented a little quicker than you would think.
Awesome. Tell me a little about the settings within the app itself. I know that I mean, it's very tactical, but there are certain things that people can opt in and out of related to messaging, surveys, and otherwise. I know that's come a long way. It's not an all or nothing notification type service that the Albertson banner apps offer. There's different tiers to it so that you're not over marketed or you're not blended in with the other messages that might not be as relevant.
Yeah, and I would say for anyone in CX here, definitely become best friends with legal, privacy, anyone that's sort of involved in this. For us, what's nice actually, so when we did the ecom push, we got very lucky that our to turn on the push, it was part of our order updates process. So we were kind of tied to the order itself. Where we're probably going long term is going to be included in, like, I think there's going to be like a survey section and you can turn on push or not for that. But early on, getting part of the order updates in the settings and having pushed there allowed us to be part of the order and kind of tell legal and privacy, like, hey, this is not a marketing survey or anything like that, right? It's actually tied to the transaction, the order itself was helpful. And then just staying in touch with them because, as Spencer mentioned, that settings page can change over time. And we've now worked with them to say, okay, well, maybe we just have like a feedback and surveys section of the settings that the customer can select. And then that will kind of take care of everything for us. Telling your internal stakeholders how important this survey is to the transaction itself and not from a marketing standpoint, I think changes the discussion and allows you to get buy-in a little bit differently than if you were on marketing, for example. Yep.
Henrik, you alluded to this a little bit in your part of the presentation, but can you tell me a little bit about the different mix of touch points that you have, how you've kind of evolved them over the last couple of years, specifically the in-app digital channel versus the pin pad versus the email? I know each of them has its pros and cons, and kind of where you've landed based on those different signals, what you see the pros and cons of each. Again, email, pin pad versus the in-app surveys.
We've experimented with their various forms. Right after we got rid of that alphanumeric code, we launched a QR code on the receipt tape, but we also realized that that competes with other messages that sit on the receipt tape. So it didn't get us as high of a response rate as we wanted. So when we looked across all of those capture methods for the Medallia side of the program, it's the device push that generates the highest response rate. But we do have a survey on the pin pad, and we get very good response rates on that. And we've seen improvement in our NPS because our operators are looking at that and they're diagnosing and they're changing procedures, using it for training opportunities and also to recognize associates. But there is a proximity bias when the customer stands so close to the cashier. They might think that the cashier can see what they can't, but they just might think that. But the really big opportunity that is opened up by leveraging Medallia for in-store experiences is that the customer then has a few days to respond to the survey. And that works in our favor because some of the rating attributes and feedback that we're interested in has to do with the moment of consumption. So you don't know that when you just finish your transaction, how fresh the product was and whether the quality met with your requirements until you prepare the food or consume it at home. So that's a key thing that we're looking for.
So, um, Michael, so you mentioned turning on video feedback recently. So it was something that, I don't know, it might have been a year and a half or even 2 years ago that I think I teased the idea with you, but it took a while for it to come to fruition. So first, like what was it about video feedback that you thought, okay, we can add this? And then two, how did you actually execute upon it? So you mentioned becoming best friends with legal and so on. There were a number of things that we had to figure out about, okay, we're capturing either the person could turn the camera on themselves to offer feedback, or they could turn the camera towards some of their products and so on. So how did you navigate that process first, and then what caught your eye about getting it added?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and from what I've heard in this conference too, it seems like a lot of organizations have a lot of quantitative data around experiences and different things around the customer. And retail and grocery might be the best example of that. We have, as we're talking, we're probably getting 20 surveys right now. And what we do, and kudos to Henrik, is every year we talk to our different stakeholders. So loyalty, merchandising, marketing, we try to find out kind of what's missing in their roadmap. And I'd say lucky for us, our ecom team is very forward thinking. And we had already experimented with the push survey with them. And when Spencer brought video feedback, I was like, well, ecom's a great partner to test this with on a pilot. And I think I heard in one of the other sessions of, or maybe it was this morning, of wanting to experiment more. If there's one area I think we do well at Albertsons is we experiment all the time. We experiment with push and it became our number one feedback channel with open-end comments. And then now in this Gen AI world, we've been doing this for 3 years for ecom and now in store. So finding that internal stakeholder that really wants to do what you're doing early on helps. And then we always use now ecom as that example of, hey, look, they've got video. Well, now in-store team and retail ops is like, we want that video too. Pharmacies now asking us for video instead of the pin pad. So I think kind of finding that one internal stakeholder like ecom in our case and getting the buy-in there. And then the other thing too, a lot of stakeholders ask is, well, how hard is this going to implement? Is this going to be 6 months? And definitely something like a post-transaction push survey is not going to be a 4-week project. I think when we first did it, it took us about 6 months. And now in store, we just launched that a couple months ago. It took significantly less time. But video feedback was almost like a plug and play for us. It really didn't take long to implement. Yeah, we don't get, 1,000 of videos a day, but the videos we do get have, and we've quantified this, around 3 or 4 times more the volume than our normal. Tell us the reason why you gave us this
Yeah,
score.
the volume of the text itself, the length of the comment.
Yes. So we kind of have this internal thing of like one video is worth 5 open-end comments for our normal reason for score. And then seeing kind of how it's being used, just as a kind of anecdotal comment. I mean, every week now I get emails from team members of like, hey, give me access to this video in Medallia's dashboard right now. Is really kind of a good way to kind of get that buy-in as well.
And I think when it was initially launched, we were all surprised as to the variation of the type of feedback we would receive, because the question itself is the question. I think we were asking about the overall delivery or the drive up and go experience, and the responses ranged from giving employees personal shout outs to giving a shout out to the person doing the shopping on their behalf. So you can imagine a scenario: the type of people that want the groceries brought out to them curbside, they're strapped for time. They might be taking care of somebody sick at home or something like that. Those invisible things that we don't see. And so they're like, yeah, you saved me 2 hours because I'm dealing with something at home, and thank you so much. Or I have a very specific dog food required, and it was not available at your store, but the person doing the shopping communicated with me through the app and gave me a very thoughtful recommendation. So thank you so much for that. And so that's on one end. The other is usually not directed at people, but more just directed at the item, maybe food quality and so on. And that's something I think you guys had an internal running joke about rotten strawberries. And then within the first week, it was a couple videos showing, hey, look, like, do you think that this should be served? It was like, oh, wow. Okay. So then you're able to then socialize that. Hey, look, I know we had this kind of internal rumor. Well, no, here's the evidence and the data for it.
Yeah, and I would just say, to add on to that, if know what you kind of want to accomplish before you do it. So for us, video feedback, we really like we know there's experiences around a rotten strawberry, and you can sometimes get that through the survey data and the scores. But when we actually saw it come to life, I mean, we got it still happens pretty frequently. We'll just get videos of just the strawberries itself, right? And no comments and no text. And for us, that's perfectly fine because then our team can go act on that because now they have picture proof that there was an issue with that order.
So how are you guys currently following up with either the video feedback itself or just any of the feedback? How are you taking action upon that, and how do you see that kind of evolving over the next year or so?
Yeah, I can start. One thing I'd love to quantify this year is, and I'm just seeing this kind of looking through the dashboard and everything, but it seems like a lot of customers who provide a video also choose to opt into our closed loop feedback. So, thanks to Medallia's recommendation, we have closed loop feedback for, I think it's anyone who gives us a 0 to 8. So it's not just detractors, but also passives as well. And it seems like with a lot of these video comments, they're also choosing to opt into closed loop feedback. And I was actually just at the financial linkage session, and I think we'd love to do some analysis around that as well. But we're really seeing that video kind of ties into all of that. And we kind of think of it as this holistic process where you might take a survey, but then we also want to close the loop. And then if you have video feedback as well, please help us there. And just hearing from our customer support team, who often will take that to the stores to fix, they're talking about how much video and just the extra metadata is making their jobs easier.
What's sorry, did you
Yeah, I just want to add to that that our company's ambition is to earn customers for life. And the senior leadership team understands that that goal can only be achieved if you have rich feedback. So we have a culture of customer experience where those leaders expect folks on their teams to leverage the insights. We provide it quite frequently to everyone, and then folks can use our dashboards to delve into their particular remits. Thank you.
So you mentioned kind of the feedback that you've gotten, especially through video, is kind of unlocking CX within the organization. What's been the biggest kind of reaction that you've seen that has made it real, something that you cannot ignore, something that I think, Henrik, you talked to me about? You would never ignore somebody that walks up to you in a store to tell you to your face feedback. And this has kind of made that real. So tell me about kind of how the reaction has been when you've shared these things in internal meetings and so on, and maybe how you've turned maybe some internal CX doubters into, okay, I get it now.
So we're experimenting with agentic AI too to recommend specific actions when certain events have taken place, and that seems to be generating a ton of interest. So I think that's something we'll be scaling going forward.
Yeah, and I would just add, I had the chance to go to Boise for an executive meeting recently, a few months ago, and being able to pull up data, like, so we have over 2,000 stores, and e-com, we have a ton of e-com data from the push, but now we're getting that in-store push as well. And we were talking about actually Las Vegas is an interesting market for us, and being able to pull up a specific store and have 25 comments and go and be able to read that with the executives and I think that's for us is this push and the video feedback gives us the volume of comments per store where if someone just gives me a store number, I can pull it up and we probably have a good amount of data to understand kind of what's going on both quantitatively and then also from an open-end comment perspective that Henrik mentioned, we're now using Gen AI and top to classify.
And then speaking of in-store, so you also don't just measure what's happening after the transaction. The in-store pushes have kind of allowed you to bring that a little bit forward to understand what might be happening in that store experience, which is kind of the latest innovation you guys have done. What do you look at over the next year or two as kind of some of those opportunities? Henrik, you mentioned pharmacy. I know we're doing a little bit of surveying around pharmacy. There's probably some opportunity there, but what, especially, maybe some things that you've learned up in the conference the last couple of days, what is something that you might say, a year from now, we want to be here?
We think there's a very rich intersection between customer experience and associate experience. Happy associates make happy customers, quite simply. So we're looking at a bunch of pathways to try and amplify that nexus.
And then just on the pharmacy side, we got some great feedback from our pharmacy team around how during certain holidays, our pin pad survey was maybe causing some friction in the customer experience. And now that we have the opportunity to do a post-transaction push for pharmacy, they're super excited because during potential high traffic times, they can actually maybe even close the pin pad survey for pharmacy and just go with our push. So, things like that I think helped kind of with the innovation roadmap as well.
It gives us flexibility.
Perfect. Cool. Yeah, I think that does it for our Q&A section. Anything else you guys want to share before we open it up to the attendees for any follow-up questions?
No, just happy to answer any questions if anyone has any subjects.
Couple questions for you about the push notification. So you mentioned that you made it part of the order flow. Did you consider making it a combination push message with some sort of a confirmation, or maybe there wasn't a confirmation push that was already going, but kind of doing a combination survey and other information about the order?
We did it for e-com, but for in-store, we have talked about that around like a digital receipt, attaching that to the push survey as well. We're kind of still TBD on that. But I think ultimately long-term, you could see our push survey with maybe a digital receipt or something like that, kind of a combination. So it's definitely worth kind of thinking about. For right now, it's more standalone. But as we kind of move more digital, I think that is definitely something that.
And then, Michael, I think we might have even forgot to mention this specific survey type, but on the receipt page in the app itself, there is a feedback option tied to recent orders. So if you did want to passively leave it, so consider it like an always on, but it's tied to the specific order where it persists. So that's something that is, it's not part of the order communication or anything like that, but it is available as a mechanism.
Sure. And then are you also sending an email in addition to the pin pad, or
So we did do an email survey as well, and it was attached to that kind of final email that was triggered for the push. And I think I've seen this in a couple other sessions too, but we actually right now have kind of turned off the email survey. We had it for a couple years. We might bring it back. I think for e-com, they've been just so excited with this push survey and the volume we're getting that email was maybe a secondary priority. And what we found too, I think why we like push a lot, maybe we could have had a slide on this, but email tends to be overwhelmingly negative. I mean, you have to kind of go in and click it and you've got an issue. Push is more spontaneous in the moment. And then pin pad is pretty much everyone's happy. So what we have found is that the push kind of gives us that balance of negative and positive a little bit, which is kind of why we like it. So
Hi, I'm Alex from Macy's. I have a lot of questions for you guys, so I would love to chat with you sometime later. But I'm really interested in the mini focus group component of the video feedback. Are you guys using that as like a UXR type of thing, or were you just saying like you're able to use it as a mini focus group? Or I don't know, did I understand that
yeah,
correctly?
no, that's exactly right. So I have a close colleague, Monique, who actually uses Medallia for UX research. And well, she also wants video feedback for what she's doing in the app and surveys, but she'll actually just look at our Medallia dashboard and go through different videos for different things that they're looking for. So yes, we do use it for that. And Medallia actually has sort of a video landing page too, where you can go in and search and it's kind of our, I call it kind of our focus group hub, and you can search topics and all that. So where like our e-com and in-store and pharmacy team might be using it for like, is that strawberry, not up to par? we have other teams that are actually using it for the UX and the focus group work.
Sometimes you don't know how prolific the feedback volume is going to be when you endeavor into an innovation like that. So we put the request for video in a certain, I don't know, I guess limited way just to feel our way out. The teams that are accountable for those experiences are actually looking at every single video right now, and they're begging us for more videos. And so what we'll be thinking about is how can we make that ask even more prominent in the survey so that we can increase the volume.
Hey there, Andrew from Lowe's. I have a couple questions. For the first one, you mentioned the score differences between the two different modes, whether it was push or that. You noticed a difference in the customer mix that are responding as well.
Yeah, on the customer mix. So I mean, and I like that question too because there's always a pro and con with the customer mix. So if you have a pen pad survey, we're gonna, I always use my mom as an example, but she's all about the pen pad survey and the coupons in there, and she might not be on the app as much. So if you do a digital survey, you are going to get a little bit more digital savvy users, and the email might be also a little bit different. I think what we found, luckily for our business, is that over time, the volume kind of makes a lot of that less crucial. Where if it's on a small sort of scale for one store, you might have a little bias in the results a little bit. But that is why we still have a variety of different sources. So like PinPad, Push. We talked about email. We did that for a while as well. And so you kind of try to get as much as you can of the customer base.
Well, one of the interesting things, I think, when we launched all of this, we thought it was going to be overwhelmingly negative feedback, but it's incredibly well balanced in the comments. They run almost 50-50. So there's a lot to work with, both knowing what to reinforce and what to improve.
I guess my second part was thinking around you guys moving away from the receipts to this push. Is there a recommendation or is there a thought process at what point of app penetration do you feel like you would need to have to be able to basically cut one of those off and move it to the other?
It comes down to absolute volume too. So if the number of survey completes per location are sufficient to trend and action, then that would inform that decision.
In terms of the users and getting the data and the insights out to the right stakeholders, do you have a process, or does Medallia help to facilitate the, let's call it the delivery of any store related insights out to that team, the product development or store design to a different org? Like, how do you ferry those different results out to the?
So we're self-service that way. About once a month, a very formal kind of succinct snapshot of the learning gets disseminated across the organization to all stakeholders. But beyond that, there's a heavy reliance on dashboards for each team. Michael mentioned the particular stakeholders we have, let's say the loyalty team or their real estate team. So they have ways to go in and look at the feedback that pertains to their areas.
Yeah, one other thing too we found really successful is we actually also have a daily email that goes out to every store if they have customer feedback for the previous day. And it is just I think it's an Excel sheet that becomes like a PDF. And I probably get emailed about that quite a bit too of, oh, this doesn't pertain to my store. You can just see kind of the people really involved and wanting to look at that every day. They can definitely check like Medallia's dashboard or our own internal dashboards if they want up to the date real time. But it's nice like when our store managers or someone comes in and you can just kind of look at a PDF with maybe it's your 5 comments for that store from the previous day. And what's great too at Albertsons is we've encouraged all of our stakeholders from the front line to backstage to really help us fine tune the models as well. So we'll classify all of our comments into different phrases and then there's sentiment and all these things tagged to it. And we actually get emails every week of, I actually think this was positive or negative. So we kind of encourage everyone to do that. And I think that daily email helps a lot to just make sure that people are paying attention to the CX feedback.
With the advent of the video capture, have you considered doing that in store? Like have a little kiosk?
Oh, like an actual kiosk with,
It's come up.
Yeah.
First one's free, the next idea, I'll charge you.
I like that idea. Yes. I think we have to actually talk. We've had some kiosk projects internally. And so, yes.
I find the idea of video feedback so compelling. It signifies so many things: emotion, brand loyalty. So, my question for you is, when an Albertsons customer submits that feedback and opts in to the inner loop closure, do you have measures in place to ensure the response you're providing to them is personal versus automated?
So our customer support team handles that right now. And I believe we're slowly working on some of the Gen AI smart response stuff. But right now, my understanding, and Henrik can correct me, I believe they're kind of doing that right now, customized based on our own team. And what's great is that we partner with them on this video feedback. So if it does go into closed loop, they will look at it and they either send it to the store or handle it directly. But yeah, we're kind of, I think, still talking about exactly how to tailor responses, how much to use AI for. And we might be doing a little bit more manually right now.
And as part of the process, customer support does send out a follow-up survey post case.
Hi, my name's Alana from Pursuit. Very exciting about the video feedback. I've also found it's a very powerful tool. One thing I've come up against is response rates. In external research surveys, I was curious how your response rates are with CX surveys.
Well, we can't mention specific response rate, but you should feel good that in relative terms, the push is where it's at. The push has higher response rates than most of the other modalities that we talked about. And it has the additional benefit of the flexibility around open text feedback and customization of the survey.
When you think about response rates too, also just think about with push, like Henrik mentioned, it does have relatively higher response rates, but also then just include like if there's video feedback or comments, we kind of think about it holistically, not just the response rate, but when we do get a response, all of the data we get in general is worth a lot more than just a percentage of a response rate too. So that's kind of how we sell it into the business.
Yeah, thank you everybody for your time. Look forward to seeing you all out there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.